We're back. Back in action. And today we talk about Law 38.
If we're able to, we're going to get
Technical.
swept away by the rain in
Oh,
California.
yeah.
February 5th, 2024, it's raining cats and dogs
Yep.
in California.
And this is Law 38 from the 48 Laws of Power by
Yes.
Robert Greene. And so this law is think as you like, but behave like others. If you make a show of going against the times, flaunting your unconventional ideas and unorthodox ways, people will think that you only want attention and that you look down upon them. They will find a way to punish you for making them feel inferior. It is far safer to blend in and nurture the common touch. Share your originality only with tolerant friends and those who are sure to appreciate your uniqueness. So, Law 38 is think as you like, but behave like others. When I thought of this, I thought of our story, my grandma's story, and your story coming from Cuba.
Oh,
And when the revolution came, basically, if you weren't with the revolution, then you
you
were
were a
an
traitor.
enemy. Yeah, you were a traitor
Yeah.
to the revolution. And so grandma would always say this story that this one gentleman, Chinese man, would walk in front of her house, and she would say, Chinito, a trabajar, right? You're going to work? And the gentleman would say, yeah, a trabajar, I'm going to work. And then once the revolution came, the same gentleman walked in front, because I guess he would do that every morning. This is the way I
Yes.
remember it.
Yeah, he would sell fruit.
And she would say something like, hey, uh, what do you think of Fidel Castro? What do you think of Fidel? Because, the revolution had just come into place. And she would always repeat this story that she would say that this Chinito, this gentleman, Chinese man in Cuba, right, who spoke Spanish,
Right, of course.
would say, shh, we don't talk about Fidel, something along those lines.
Well, he would say, Fidel corta cabeza, Fidel cuts your head off.
Right. So we don't talk about Fidel.
Right. And by the way, we had a large Chinese community in Cuba, and they all spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
Very entrepreneurial.
Oh,
They
yeah.
all had businesses.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
But
Chinese are everywhere,
but what he what
all over
he's
the world.
what he was getting to is that you can think what you want, but you have to not stand out and not go against the revolution, because in this situation he was saying Fidel would kill you,
Right.
which he did. He killed a
A
lot of
lot
the
of people.
opposition.
That's right.
And that story came to mind because something you've always said is like, hey, stay under the radar, right? And I think a lot of these things come from the what you went through. You
The
were
fear.
born in
It's
Cuba
fear.
during that time. Yeah, fear that you stand out,
Yes.
and fear that they can come and get you. And that's what Robert Greene's saying. Think as you like, behave like others.
That's so interesting you bring that up, Mike, because that fear, even though we left Cuba,
Mm-hmm.
came with us to Europe. We were in Europe, in Spain, and came here to the United States with us.
Yeah.
Where many times when my mom wanted to say something, she would lower her voice. And I would think, why are you lowering your voice? We're in the United States of America. It's a free country. You can speak your mind. But she would lower her voice because she always had that fear that someone might be listening, you know, and it
Yeah.
carries over. It does a thing to you. So, we all grew up in different areas. Patrick Bet David, it's a prime example of that. That's one thing. And then the other thing that's interesting with the story you brought up is that we kept going along with the Cuban regime, but we had a plan to get out of Cuba.
Right.
Okay. But the minute there was a point in time when you had to put your foot down and say, we're leaving the country, we are applying for the visa. And at that point, all bets were off.
You
The game
weren't
is over because we were no longer doing what everybody else was
right.
doing.
You weren't under the radar
No
anymore.
more.
No.
And we were a full fledged traitor to the cause.
Right.
And we were treated different by friends, family, and
Yeah.
the whole work. I mean,
Yeah.
we it was a an overnight change. And I was 9 years old, and I remember. So imagine how
Mm-hmm.
the details that an adult can gather and keep in their brains. Because I'm 9 years old. I want to play. You know,
And
and I
also
and I
for
remember being treated differently.
and
Yeah,
also for somebody who's outspoken, they would get rid of them. They would put them in jail. They would, they didn't tolerate people. So you had to be kind of hidden with what your actual thoughts were.
right.
And then, but I remember grandma saying multiple things that, I think she was somewhat outspoken. So it was very hard for her to keep it, under the radar that she wanted
Absolutely,
to leave.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
there's sacrifices that they did this all these sacrifices for me because I was their baby, and they wanted to get me out of there because they thought that it was a better future outside of the country.
Right.
Okay, and in observance of the law 38, he talks about Jonas Salk,
Mm-hmm.
where he discovered the vaccine of polio. And what does he do? He comes out to the public and
Yeah.
says, "Hey, look what I've done," and takes all the credit. But what did he not do? You know, he did not follow protocol in the scientific community. And
Mm-hmm.
so he spent the rest of his life trying to amend for that, let's call it a mistake. He
Right.
struggled the rest of his life trying to get funding, struggled the rest of his life trying to get cooperation from the scientific community,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't follow protocol.
Right.
He just
So your peers think, oh, this guy thinks he's better than us,
correct.
and they'll make your life miserable.
They'll make your life
Because
miserable.
you do need people to, I mean, I don't know that world too well, but in science, I believe you need backing for funding and grants and all this stuff. You can't just do it on your own. And
Correct.
that was his mistake. He didn't want to play the game of politics. He thought that politics was outside of science. He thought he made that big mistake.
That's
Look at what we experienced just a few years ago. Politics and science is very connected, you know. But you know,
you're talking about
the
COVID.
pandemic,
Yeah,
yeah. The I find it interesting because with going back to grandma and the Cuba situation, um there's a very within our family and family friends there was a story that um this one gentleman raised this one lady like a daughter, this one girl like a daughter. But when the revolution came and communism came, that daughter ended up turning in her father.
correct.
He was like a father to her.
He sure was.
And there's some friends of the family that never forgave that lady for doing that, right?
Oh,
Because she turned in her father to the government. See, and I think people don't understand these stories, how people can turn in their own family members because they think that they're doing it for a good cause, let's say. And I don't know the specifics, but from what I understand, this gentleman had a little store of some sort or
and trucks.
in trucks and was help basically using getting like bartering, right?
And using the trucks to send items of food under the table, or not sharing with the government because you had to give everything up. And then it would be supposedly distributed equally, but you couldn't make those decisions. You had to give it to the government. And by turning him in, she actually destroyed his life. That's
Yeah.
why the rest of the family could never forgive her. And she was a staunch communist.
Yeah, see, so that's a situation that I think, okay, had, let's say, this gentleman blended in more, maybe not let but this was like family. So you have to be careful because this law says, it says only share your originality with tolerant friends and those sure to appreciate your uniqueness. But how do you know, you think you're sharing? your originality with somebody who will tolerate it and appreciate it, but maybe they are a spy. You know what I mean? Maybe they don't. Maybe they still feel like, oh, this guy thinks he's superior. Because that's what this has to do with power,
Of course,
right?
these are power moves. Yeah.
These are power moves, and it makes sense that if you think you're special and you start doing things a little different, people are going to not like that. The people who are just kind of following and in the crowd and, you know, doing the what they're told or doing what everybody does, and you stand out here trying to do something different. And so Robert Greene's saying, in terms of power, you need to blend in with the group until you reach a place of enough power, right? Where you can
Yes,
actually at that point now influence people.
I agree. What is it called? Breaking force, or when Joe Rogan had something to say about that with Jordan Peterson, because they've been after Jordan Peterson. They're trying to destroy him
Mm,
for his ideas and thoughts,
yeah.
and he said you had enough. It's a term that's used by the spaceship, the
Oh,
launching.
okay. Yeah.
He had enough breaking power where he could get. It wasn't. He was big enough where they couldn't knock him
They couldn't
out.
stop it at that
They
point, like
couldn't
the
stop.
velocity that he was taking off at.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but you have to get to that point. If they cut you at the knees before you get there, and that's what, and I think Robert Greene's also talking about within organizations. You know, within an organization, you have to kind of play this game to survive.
You know, you just reminded me, and it's bearing off a little bit, but we're gonna do a podcast on the Knights Templar,
Mm-hmm.
and the French king that wanted to destroy them issue an ordinance 30 days prior to a very special date where they all were arrested and tortured. And he sent it out to all his um, colonels, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
but with the order to only open it on Friday the 13th, 1307. So 30 days prior to, this strategy had been done, but it wasn't, it had been sent. They received it. They had to hold that manuscript or whatever sealed for 30 days and open it the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early mornings of Friday the 13th, 1307, they were all arrested. So it's interesting, that,
Mm.
yeah, these are power moves. And it, you need to get to a position of tremendous power before you reveal what you've got going on if it goes against the norm.
Right.
If it goes against the norm.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
it it is one heck of a law. They all are.
we met a gentleman recently that is a manager at a place that we like, and he was sharing with us how and he even drew it out for us. He says, "I don't want to be uh, these these the big guys. I don't want to be the big guys that are getting all the attention. I want to just be the little guys in between
Yeah, he's a good
and
guy.
blend right in." And that's pretty much what this is about. You don't want a lot of attention. You're not looking for all the eyes. You just want to blend in and live that kind of life.
Yeah, he had no idea how close he's to this law,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because
His name is Carlos.
yeah, because some people don't want, because with attention comes other things.
Oh yeah,
It's easier
issues, problems, potentially,
potentially.
because now you're standing out. They want to knock you out.
Yeah, you're a target
You're a target.
as opposed to blending in.
Correct.
And that's the power of blending in. And I've always thought, hey, it's good to be original and have original ideas, and in some instances. Now, this law contradicts other laws that Robert Greene has that are talking about, um, being original and, I mean, right now off the top, I don't. it doesn't come to mind like which law in particular, but there's a like look at even law 34, be royal in your own fashion, act like a king to be treated like one. That's not blending in.
No,
But that's law 34. So I think it's really important for people and us when we come across these laws, it's knowing when to use them.
correct.
You have it in your tool belt. When do you need to blend in? I know in 2020 when the pandemic was, went down, it was very interesting here in California
Oof.
because you had a lot of people that were not in agreement with each other, but they only know your position if you reveal it, right?
Right.
Based on everything occurring, politics, science, all the stuff that was going down in 2020.
And it created a lot of division between family members.
Family members, friends,
Oh,
there were some,
friendships were broken because did you take the
absolutely.
vaccine? You didn't take the vaccine? This and that, whatever. No,
Yeah,
whatever.
a lot of people were I think fear
Yes.
penetrated, like in Cuba, fear penetrated, and that was interesting how people turned on each other. You know, there were some people that we considered friends, no longer.
You know, this reminds, it may apply to the law. Maybe we're diverging a little bit, but that's the beauty of our podcast, right? Um, it reminds me of a story
Mm-hmm.
where they were. Did I interrupt you, son?
Uh,
I'm sorry.
no, 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 I was just
It
sharing
seemed like
that.
you had something else.
No, I was just sharing that that there were quote unquote friendships that are no longer because of views not in agreement, this and that. But if you, let's say, if I would have been more of a student of this law, maybe I wouldn't. People wouldn't know where I stand with certain things.
Right. And it says, um, there was one point in the law where it says, you know, you're not faking it. You're just being, you are agreeing with them and you do have your own opinion and you base it on the agreement with them when you are with them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know how that's not faking it, but it's like, yeah, you do have your own
Well, he
idea.
said, well, yeah, he said something about values. It's not that you're somebody without values.
Right.
You just happen to have the same values that they have when
When
you're
you're
with
with
them.
them. I mean,
Yeah,
you're a chameleon, right? To a certain extent.
yeah, yeah.
So it reminds me of a very interesting story. I read this, and it was during the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese wanted to show the Americans that their prisoners were treated properly. So they did like an interview on their own prisoners and to pick the best one, okay, to convince naval intelligence that the prisoners of war in Vietnam were not being harmed. So this guy, they pick one guy,
Mm-hmm.
and in the interview was being aired, you know, and they recorded the interview. Um, and what happened was that the guy says, "Hey, you know what? The lights are strong, but I can do it." And so they asked him point blank, "How are the prisoners being treated?" In the Vietnam war camps and stuff like that. And verbally, he said, "Oh, we're being treated well, this and that." However, he knew Morse code, and with his eyes, he blinked.
That's
He
crazy.
blinked the word torture.
Oh my God.
Okay, and the Vietnamese then realized it. He says, "Hey, the lights are strong, this and that. How are the prisoners of war being treated? Oh, they're being treated great." And he's blinking the word torture with Morse code.
And that's a true story?
Yes, this is a very true story from the
Wow.
Vietnam War, and it came out, and he was the first one to inform naval intelligence. We're being tortured, guys. If you think that we're not being tortured, you got something else, because we're being tortured. After that, when the word got out, the Vietnamese realized what he had done,
Mm.
and they tortured him pretty good too.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but he convinced him. He went along with them initially. "I'm your man for the interview."
Mm.
He had an alternative motive. And by the way,
Yeah, he got a message out.
I read it, And then I found the video
Oh wow.
that was released, and it's extremely interesting.
Wow.
And this is, somebody going along
Mm-hmm.
until
Yeah.
he had a message.
He
He
accomplished
sacrificed
his.
himself
Yeah. He,
to, can you imagine? Oh, everything is good, and he's blinking the word
yeah.
torture.
He accomplished his goal,
He
which
sure
was
did.
to hey get the word out.
Get the word out. We're being tortured in the camps, guys.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Tremendous story, right?
Yeah. But if he would have come out from the beginning and said no this and
Oh,
that, of course they
o-
weren't gonna put
of
him on.
course not.
So
Of
yeah.
course they wouldn't.
So yeah. No, that's interesting how he was able to kind of hide what he
Tremendous.
really felt initially.
Right. And the same was in Cuba and in these totalitarian kind of governments. If you want to do something, if you come out
Yeah.
originally without having any kind of power of cooperation from people, they'll cut your head off
I'm
or
sure.
cut you at the knees, and you're
Yeah.
done.
You're done.
And
Yeah. There's no opposition.
no,
And that that's why I spoke on our story, our family story of Cuba, what you went through leaving, because I don't know what happens in these other countries. You hear a lot of other things, but you do know this experience because this was our experience.
right.
This was grandma's experience,
Yeah, she lived
grandpa's.
it.
So um, that's the reality of what they went through with communism.
Right.
Uh, one of the quotes is put on the mask that is most appropriate for the group in which you find yourself. So that's talking about like, some people say it's faking it, other people say it's putting on a mask. And you're doing that just because you want to blend in with the group.
Yeah, we're actors on the stage of life,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you just gotta, it depends. I'm always big on intentions, depending what your intentions are. And you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta swim with sharks sometimes to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I, these are power moves,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And you can see them in the corporate world. Like we say, you can find them in religion, you can find them in family life. These are power moves,
Yeah.
and they should be treated as such.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Because if you use the laws, you can potentially get what you're looking to accomplish without directly saying it.
right,
And that's what I think is interesting about this law. He also Robert Greene talked about the Greek
oh,
general
mm-hmm,
Pausanias,
yeah,
which was interesting because he was Greek, but then he started having some sort of allegiance to the Persians, which they were fighting. And so the Greeks began to, because he started dressing like the Persians and he started wearing cologne like the Persians and he started living that lifestyle. And they're saying, wait a second, what's going on here? Uh, and then they come to find out that he had formed a pact with Xerxes so that he could become, ruler of these lands in Greece.
right,
Um,
with the Persians'
with the
help.
Persians' help. So he was a traitor. The way they found out though was because he was so Robert Greene uses this example because even though he hadn't openly said that he wasn't that he was with the Persians, of course, the way he was dressing and
Behaving,
behaving was
yes,
obvious. He wasn't blending in. And so the Greeks began to feel, hey, this guy thinks he's superior, he thinks he's better than us. He was gravitating towards this other culture, and and it ended up that
bring some coffee.
it ended up that
Gavinia coffee.
they found out, right, because he was a message. He sent out a message to Xerxes. This Pausanias sends out a message to Xerxes. It gets intercepted, and then they set up a meeting. He thought he was going to meet with some messenger, and it ends up that they were the Greeks were in hiding, and sure enough, they found out he was a traitor
Right.
in that
There's
secret meeting.
that's the one of the observance of the law.
He ends
And
up dying of starvation
correct,
in a temple.
in a temple.
They never went into the temple. They let him stay in there. I think out of respect, actually.
Out of respect for the grounds that he was in, because that was a hallowed temple, I think, and also for out of respect for him too, right? I
I
think.
think out of respect for him
Okay.
also, because he had done a lot of good things for the Greeks. I think it's the Spartans, right? The
Of
Spartans?
course, he was Spartan.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
Spartan. He had done a lot of good things for the Spartans. And
absolutely.
so they kind of had this
Well, he
still.
was sent originally as an emissary to Persia. Look, he fell in love with the Persian culture. So the Greek culture was more based on discipline and basic simplicity.
Simplicity, minimalism,
Right. And he comes out, and the Persians were into luxury and
jewelry, and
jewelry and all this stuff. And
yeah,
there's an allure to the exotic.
that's what
He
he
says
says.
it in the observance of the law.
Yeah.
And so, for example, let me give you, I'm very proud of my heritage, but I love Egypt,
Hmm.
okay, because of all its mysteries and stuff. Very close second, Iran. I love the history of Iran. I love the entire Middle East, okay?
We have Middle Eastern
I mean, look at this, the Damascus,
Lamasos right
Damascus,
here.
and so you know, it's fascinating,
Hmm.
okay? And so, it's not difficult to see
Yeah,
you get pulled into this, and then
foreign,
where are
something
the
foreign.
stops? Where do you stop?
Yeah.
You got to have the discipline to say, hey, you know what, my roots are this is culture. And it says it. If you think that culture is based on hundreds of years of traditions and things that you do with your family, it's
Yeah.
traditional. So you can't overlook it. You got to come back somehow.
Mm.
And where's the point of no return? You know. Um,
Well, in this case, he was betraying
Yeah, even
his own
Alexander
people.
the Great, when he went into Egypt, he was made a pharaoh.
Mm.
Okay, and so it's the allure of these exotic type of cultures. Um, you gotta cling to your roots and
And
never forget where you come from. You can never, I think that's key.
and in let's say our current situation, what would be an example of that? It could be maybe someone with some idea that's seen as an idea that attracts you somehow.
Yeah, well,
You
you can
know.
apply it to business all the time. We're always trying to get creative, trying to figure out,
Yeah.
you know, business, how to grow it, how to increase it, how to,
Yeah.
uh, you know. So these laws, if you don't like the law to begin with, you got to realize, go back to the idea, the basic, that these are power moves.
Yeah.
You have to realize that from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't have to apply them, but you can be aware of them
Yeah.
so that when you're being played, when there's somebody else that knows the laws, has read the book from cover to cover and underlined every word of it, and then it's doing that on you, you can identify, hey, is this actually happening to me?
Right.
And then you have a defense for that because you're not naive anymore. You read the book and you know how to, you know?
Yeah. And like you said the other day, there are some people that it seems that they just
They don't need to read the
these
book.
laws yeah, they're just innate. They just have an understanding somehow of these laws. And then there are some people that study them, or
Right.
there are some people that have lived it. Like you talk about, you had experienced some people using these laws on you, but they weren't written yet necessarily.
I didn't know about
I
it.
think these were written, what did we say, 90s?
In the 90s, yeah.
98 or something like
I
that.
think so. He came up with the book in 1998.
So, yeah, something like
Had,
that.
had the
So,
book been out when I started business in 1985, I started actually in 86,
but there are other
early
books,
80s.
like he bases a lot of his things off of, Robert Greene bases it off of Napoleon,
Yes,
off of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, um, and Machiavelli with
for
the
sure.
Prince, which was I think 14, 1500s,
Something.
something around that time.
Oh, yeah.
So you know there were previous uh, works to pull from.
Right.
He just Robert Greene. I think one of the strength in it is that he puts it into laws. 48 of them.
Well, the level of research that he does to write a book,
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's mind blowing.
yeah,
I mean, the man throws himself into research to the point that he tells everybody. I believe he's mentioned that, he tells his family, "Hey, I gotta be left alone,"
yeah,
and he just gets the level of research you can tell for every book that he's got. He's got like what, 7 books out or something like that, and
yeah,
they're all in their own right tremendous.
yep.
I think he's one of the best writers of our
I
times.
think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to throw in on this
No,
law?
that'll do it. This
Yeah.
was
Think
interesting.
as you like, behave like others. Remember that, everybody. And if you guys are enjoying it, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We have all the laws in the description and more to come.
And more to come.
Thank you.